excited about today. Opportunity to add three more players that really upgrade our football team. Let's start with Eddie Jackson, Alabama. A player we had graded high on our board, obviously willing to move up for. Plays free safety, also a very good punt returner, a converted corner, very good instincts, very good ball skills. Something we need and something we're excited about. So a good addition for us. Tariq Cohen, North Carolina A&T, a guy we call him Joker back. So he's really a good third down back out of the backfield. Can separate with his routes. Really a dynamic player that dominated at that level. We're really excited to add him. One of those guys that's fun to watch. You start watching one game, 2 games, 3 games. Pretty soon you're watching his whole season because he's just a very entertaining, electric, exciting player. And lastly, Jordan Morgan. Played tackle in college. We see him more as a guard. He can do a little bit of both because he's got good arm length. Again, an advantage of coaching the Senior Bowl was intimate knowledge with this player. And another small school player, but I think that Senior Bowl experience kind of cemented it for us, that the kind of player that he is. We're excited about adding him to our offensive line. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Ryan, to only draft one defensive player after all the dust settled, what are your thoughts on that just in general, that you only have one guy?
Rich, I think the drafts unfold different every year, and I know last year leaned more heavily defense, so it's just how it kind of unfolds. And this year, that's just the way it worked out, and you guys know we're taking best player available, and that's the way the draft fell, and we're just happy to get good football players.
Yeah, you've been through a lot of these over the years. How did Thursday night rate for you in terms of the wow factor and your reaction to what happened?
Well, I think, anytime you earn the currency of the third pick in the draft, obviously it's really exciting, because I think the further you pick to the top, quote, the better players you get. So I was very pleased with how the draft went, very pleased with the guys we got. I don't know that we met all our needs. I think that's impossible when you're rebuilding like we are, but very pleased with all the players we got.
Specifically with Mitch, it's our first chance to talk to you since he's drafted. What do you like about him, your time visiting with him? What are your thoughts on him?
Well, I think, the quarterback position was obviously a need position as well. I think that became pretty obvious when we went out in free agency and got Mike Glennon. I think you're always trying to add depth at every position. And unlike what some people think, quarterback is key too. I mean, if you look back a year ago, we went through 3 quarterbacks, due to injury. So building depth, I think, is really important. I think Mitch is a quality player. I think if you did research, and we get to do that, I'm going to say that a lot of people had him ranked very high, and us no different.
What are your thoughts on giving him maybe a full year to sit and learn and develop?
Well, I think it's hard to predict, any length of time, or to try to say, just like any other position, whether it was Leonard Floyd or, Kevin White, or going back to Von Miller. I think you line up, you compete like any other position, and they decide, when that time is.
You had pride yourself on your relationship with your players. Have you talked to Mike Glennon in the last couple of days, and what can you say to him?
I think, anytime, my experience has been, anytime you draft a player in the first round, really anytime you draft a player, you do have that relationship. And so there is I don't know what kind of moment, but you're not really excited, whether it was outside linebackers a year ago or wide receivers, the year before, guys, and you allow them that, what I mean? I think that's something that you do, and you do talk that through. So, but they get over it, and then they start competing, and it's Mike's team. He's the starter, and, I think he feels really good about that at this point.
John, what are some of the challenges for the coaching staff managing that situation? What you just talked about there, Glennon's morale and all that, but also reps and the way that's going to have to split up.
Well, I think, we had to talk to all the quarterbacks, whether it was Mark Sanchez or Connor Shaw. I mean, everybody's like, but that's true no matter who you draft. I don't care what position it is. It always has been. But, rep-wise, I mean, the way we practice, everybody gets reps anyways. I think that's why in the past we've developed, guys that may not come in as high draft picks. I mean, we had Chris Harris in Denver. He came in as a college free agent. Well, he got reps, and that's how he proved to the coaches what he could do, and he moved up the depth chart. Well, it'll be no different with anybody at any position
John,
here.
when you were evaluating Trubisky, what did you like about the way that he fit into the current offensive structure?
Well, I think he upgrades as a quarterback. I think he's got accuracy, he's got mobility, he's a real fierce competitor. I mean, I turn into a scout once football season's over. So it's our whole staff does. We spend half the day on football, half the day on scouting. That means going on the road like a scout. I mean, we scoured the whole country looking at guys. And with Mitchell, I think. I loved his demeanor, loved what he brings as far as a leader and a competitor, and obviously the physical tools.
Ryan, many would say that there's a little bit of unknown with these new players, a little bit of an experience with Mitch, 3 players from below the FBS level, Eddie coming off an injury. What would be your response to that, especially since you both know these players a little bit more intimately than the rest of us?
That's a good question, and I give credit to our scouts and our coaches and all the work that we've done. I mean, there's so much that goes into this, and so much knowledge gained on these players that makes John and I feel more comfortable when we're making these decisions. So whether it's a one-year starter or a small school player or a guy coming off injury, we've thoroughly researched these things to feel good about them. And I think in regards to the small school, we've all had players that we've been part of that have been highly successful. And I look at Jordan Morgan today, and I hate to make comparisons to players, but we took a guy in New Orleans, Jari Evans, who ended up being a great player from Bloomsburg. So I think you believe what you see on tape. You have conviction on players, and especially, and I've said this before, when I feel like we have a consensus in our building on the player, those decisions are fun to make and exciting to make, and I'm really excited to see what some of these guys do on this stage because we're confident in their abilities.
Ryan, every scat back or pinball type back gets compared to anyone who's quality gets compared to Sproles. Wondering, is there anything about Cohen that is really deserving? I mean, really deserving of that comparison?
It's a good Yeah, it's a good question because I was with Sproles, and saw the value of that back, and there's when you have a back like that on third down, it can be a mismatch problem for the defense because it's hard to cover those guys, and there are similar traits, and I don't want to put these expectations on these players. They haven't even got here yet, but man, he's quick as a running back. He's instinctive as a running back. He was productive in every season he had there, but then you split him out of the backfield, and he's going to shake and separate from a linebacker and a safety. So he can create problems with his quickness and his suddenness and his athleticism. And he was one of those guys we were all pretty fired up about, and not just from the YouTube videos. So.
John, you mentioned when the Adams question about Mitch and the plan for him to start, not as the starter, but you mentioned Kevin White and Leonard. Both of those guys were on the field at once, by the time we got to training camp. And I'm just curious if you sense a deeper opportunity cost for what you might have had in terms of a plug-and-play player at number 3 versus a guy whose plan is to be on the sideline and developing, not contributing right away.
To explain that, I think in this league you need depth. If you looked at our preseason a year ago, when our ones in the very first game or in the second game when they play a half, the backups go in. All right, well, those backups, all right, can all of a sudden be starters, like in one play. All right, and like I mentioned earlier, that happened to us a lot. All right, so that can control how your season goes. So I think there's not a team out there that's not trying to build that. There was 2 or 3 teams that did the same thing we did and have guys. So it's not like it's some new thing that's been done, by just us. So we're trying to build depth and build a better football team.
Back to Tariq for a second. What did you learn about him in your visit with him when he came in?
He has a chip on his shoulder. I like that, and always wanting to prove people wrong, and has a confidence to him. When we get these guys in the building, a lot of the time spent with our coaches, really gathering their football intelligence, so a really high football IQ, which is important for that position because you're going to be moving them around a lot and doing a lot of different things with them. But I think the thing that stood back was just the energy that he has, but that he has a chip on his shoulder, and I really like that about him.
Fair to say that Dowell signed off that the height wasn't an issue with him?
Yeah, that was yeah, he was good.
I wanted to be able to look eye to eye with somebody.
Ryan, how do you feel about where your secondary is now compared to the end of the season when obviously a lot of the talk was on the interception?
Definitely, and we added a lot in free agency, and that was part of the plan, you know. So we signed 3 corners in free agency and a safety, and now we just drafted the safety. So part of our free agency plan was to attack the secondary, and we accomplished it there. And that kind of allowed us to draft best player available when this moment came. So,
Brian, we get a chance to ask you.
Hold on, my man Mullen's been trying to get a question in for half an hour. Go ahead, John.
You've been through 3 drafts now with Ryan. How has he changed? Has he become bossier? Has he listened more? How would you describe him?
Yeah, he's been the same guy. I mean, we talk about that in this building, whether it's players, coaches, or personnel people. You know, I think he's done a terrific job, and he's got great people skills. And you know, you listen, but then you got to go with your gut too. You got to go, you know, with people you're convicted to. And you know, after 3 years, I mean, every year you have convictions on players, and you know, everybody kind of keeps track of that. And you know, been in this spot, you know, it's like 3 straight years, and even been in this spot a few times with high picks. You know, so you know, I think he's done a terrific job.
Brian, we didn't get a chance to ask you about Tracy Porter. I was just wondering, was that kind of a cost efficiency situation, or was there something about Tracy's play which kind of tailed off at the end of last year that kind of told you that it was going to keep going down?
yeah, you know, I think, you know, Mark, it was also a product of us adding a lot to the secondary. And, you know, the free agency kind of unfolded in a way where we added, you know, more and more and more corners. And once it kind of unfolded that way, I was looking at the construction of the roster and kind of how everybody would fit in. And in fairness to Tracy, I thought it was good that we go ahead and do it at that moment in time, you know. So.
Ryan, are you gonna decline Kyle Fuller's 5th-year option?
Yes, we are gonna, yeah.
Ryan, 3rd draft for you and 3 different college scouting directors up here as well. What did you learn about Sadowski this run through with him in his new role?
That's a good question. He's outstanding. He's highly organized. He's great with the staff. You know, the morale of the staff. He's and he's a really good evaluator. You know, so Mark, you know, a lot of sleepless nights for him, a lot of time away from home, and his work ethic is outstanding. Me and Mark go way back to New Orleans, so really proud of the job that he did. Can't say enough about him.
Ryan, only 5 picks in your smallest class of 3. I don't want to say regrets, but is the sense that maybe quality overweighed quantity in this sense?
Yeah, you know, John and I talked about that this morning because we were looking at the draft board and we were looking at Eddie Jackson, and we knew if we wanted to get him, we were probably going to have to trade away one of our 6th-round picks. And so we talked about that. You know, hey, let's just go ahead and get guys that we know we like right now. Let's be aggressive here, because I felt like the later part of the draft was kind of weakening down. So when we were able to go get Eddie Jackson, a guy that we had targeted, a guy that was kind of sticking up on our board, we traded away the 6th to do that.
You mentioned weakening now, so no serious efforts maybe to trade back in there.
No, at that time we were good. Our guys right now are kind of hammering away on college free agency, and I feel good about that.
Right, with Eddie, what jumped out to you in your evaluations of what made him a target for you, particularly obviously coming off the injury? How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, it was just the ball skills and the instincts. So we really liked him as a safety. And then you combine that with his skills as a punt returner, and we knew we wanted to address punt returner. So it was like, man, we're gonna, you know, kill 2 birds with 1 stone here and get a good safety and a good punt returner. And it's always good for me when I feel the excitement of our defensive coaches and the excitement of our special teams coaches and the excitement of our head coach. It's a good pick to make.
How is he physically right now in terms of where he's at?
He's good. So we talked about it a lot. He's good. So I could see him being limited in the rookie mini camp and then kind of steady progression in through OTAs.
After going 3-13 last year, I realized nobody wants to do that. How are you guys better in the immediate sense after these 3 days?
Well, I think it would have been much better last year if we could have stayed more healthy. You know, I mean, I don't know that we were, you know, blessed with a lot of depth going into the season, and obviously that takes its toll. You know, I got to visit with you guys every Monday after those, but you know, I think just getting healthy will be real important, and then, you know, plus the additions we've made in free agency and now with the draft.
Now, you guys, when you were in Denver and you took Vaughn number 2, obviously a very different situation when you found that and Mitch here. What's the patience that you as a head coach have to manage with having a number 2 pick that's going to be in a different role than maybe you've had before?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you're trying to accumulate really good football players. You know, I'll go back to very kind of similar, opposite, but similar. Way back to my Carolina experience, we took Julius Peppers, number 2 overall. We got destroyed, all right, for not taking Joey Harrington at quarterback. All right, now flash forward, and it's kind of reversed. At the end of the day, what's going to be key, and I don't care who you take, what position, or even what pick at some level. You're hoping you hit a home run, and you research and you work it, and time tells.
John, this year you did take a quarterback.
Uh-huh.
Of all the years you've been in the draft, this is the highest you ever taken a quarterback. What's your sense of how this kind of changes the identity of the team, the direction of the team? This is a guy you see as the future of the franchise.
Well, I think it's conviction. I go flash back. You look at different quarterbacks that were taken, how they did. There's a lot of guys. Going back to even Denver. Cam Newton. We didn't know. We picked second. You don't know what happens. So you have to evaluate a lot of different positions, create that cloud, and then nobody knows what's going to happen until the people pick in front of you, whether you're at 2 or you move to 2 or you're at 7. So it's you have to go through a lot of research, not just an evaluation, all right, but how the draft's going to go. And this draft was no different than the other 15 drafts I've been a part of as head coach.
Now that he's on the team, how does from your vantage point as the head coach of the team, here's this guy who's going to be seen publicly as the franchise, the face of the franchise in the future.
Right.
How do you handle that with him and with your team, especially with him?
Well, even I don't know that I've experienced that myself on a team, but I know good friends of mine that have had high pick quarterbacks that they've developed. I go back to Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, watching how that goes. So there's a lot of different ways to handle it. Jeff Fisher, a good friend, how he handled Goff. Is it going to be easy? No, none of this stuff's easy. All right, but we'll find a way.
Ryan, as you know, the backup quarterback's a popular guy in every city. A highly drafted backup quarterback, probably even more so. How do you think Glennon will react if something goes wrong on the field and the fan base starts chanting for you at the time?
One of the things that I like a lot of things about Mike Glennon, but one of the things that I really like is like the inner confidence that he has. He's a confident guy. He believes in himself, and he should because he's a good player. And I'm glad Mike's here. Mike's our starting quarterback, as I've stated. So I think any quarterback just got to be able to brush off adversity and fight through, and that's what Mike will do. So I think he'll handle that well.
Right, and Coach, if you guys could grade, now that you can take a step back, the overall draft and the players that you've taken, if you could put a grade on it, what would you give it?
I'll tell you
I'm
in 3
sure
years.
we'll get some input.
Anybody else? John, from a defensive coach's lens, when you look at the tight end you guys picked up last night, what jumps at you about who he is and what he brings?
I think the real, you flash back when you've been doing it as long as I have. I still have my senses, but every once in a while players will jump to mind. But when I was in Pittsburgh way back in 1990, we drafted a kid. At that time, the university was called Liberty Baptist, Eric Green. Very small school, but a big body. And, then the basketball background, go back to Julius Thomas we took, I think, in the 3rd round when I was at Denver. So there's different ways to gain separation. There's different body types that can create separation and matchup problems. With Adam, what was very impressive, which is also very important in basketball, having dabbled in that at a younger age, is the body control for a big man. Guys that you watch, in the NBA, they're extremely, they have to have good hands and they have to have very good body control to play the game of basketball at a high level. This guy brought that. He did that, and he's pretty impressive to what he can do as far as adjusting and catching footballs.
Right, is anyone participating in the off-season program that you thought would be able to at this time?
It's voluntary, so, but we're aware where everybody's at, but to get into who's here and who's not, I'd rather not do that.
Right, with 5 picks, just the number 5 there. Are you happy with that quantity of picks?
We won 20.
No, I'm saying,
let us.
obviously you'll go through college free agency and add players that way, but talk about building through the draft. Does that number?
Yeah, and I
sit
think,
well
and I
with
think,
you?
Rich, it was more like, hey, we got a certain point today where it was like, I could feel where it was gonna drop off a little bit. So let's go ahead and get players that we know we're gonna feel good about, instead of just getting quantity and it just is, guys we're not excited about.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, everybody.